Okay, knock knock. Who's there? Gaslight? Gaslight who? What do you mean gaslight who? I never knocked. You must be imagining things. Sorry, there's one more. How many gaslighters does it take to change a light bulb? That's a silly question because the room isn't even dark. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 120 of Waking Up to Narcissism. You can maybe tell what today's topic is going to be. I got a little funny story to share. Here I was thinking that I know that I did a deep dive on gaslighting a few episodes ago. And as a matter of fact, I remember right after that, there was an emergency episode where there was a person asking for help and we broke down the game film of the email that she sent me as well. We covered a lot of ground in that first episode talking about narcissism. And in that one, I broke down a very short poem, but then it led to so many other things that I was trying to set the table for gaslighting. So I was moving on to the next topics. Got some really exciting things coming up in the next few weeks. But then my daughter, Sydney, who is helping me, she's on some of the TikTok lives, she's in some of the Instagram reels, and she's doing a lot of the video editing and a lot of the behind the scenes work for me, which I'm so grateful for. But she comes up to me and she said, hey, did you see the comment on the YouTube video? She said, somebody's really excited about part 2 of the gaslighting episode. And my first thought was, wait a minute, part 2? So all of a sudden I was racking my brain. I was trying to remember, I did mention a second part. Did I make a promise that I'd forgotten about, or was I just losing my mind? Because after all that talk about gaslighting, maybe I'm gaslighting myself. And then I even thought maybe this commenter is actually the master gaslighter, making me question my own memory and my own plans. So then I just looked at Sid and I said, you know what? Tell the commenter that they are right. There was not only going to be a part 2, I distinctly remember promising a 12-part series on gaslighting. And if they disagree, well, then maybe they should question their own memory. And then I realized that actually isn't very funny to begin with, because I literally did promise a second episode. So here we are, part 2 of the 2-part series on gaslighting. Let's just cover some of the basics first of all, and the basics being episode 120. I'm Tony Overbay. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Please join my newsletter and reach out and purchase a course, or join the private Facebook group for women or the men's emotional architects group. But let's dig in here a little bit deeper. Let's start to learn about our own emotional immaturity, or dare I say even narcissistic traits and tendencies, because it is being talked about so much in the zeitgeist, in the public landscape. And I'm telling you, if you really embrace the concepts around emotional immaturity, if that is something that you are starting to notice in yourself, there is hope. There really is. So we're going to talk a lot about the concepts around narcissism, narcissistic traits and tendencies, and emotional immaturity throughout any of these episodes. And if you're new to the show, please go back. It's a lot of episodes, but I've had people say that they do start somewhat at the beginning because I do lay the groundwork or the foundation that narcissistic personality disorder is a pretty small percentage of the population. But if you really frame it in we're all emotionally immature until we're not, we don't know what we don't know. We're in these codependent and enmeshed relationships because that was the familiar pattern that we most likely saw in our childhoods. Then we can start to make sense of things, and we get to points in our relationship where it doesn't seem that crazy, that the relationship is not in a good place. But then what do we do about that? And that's where you have this amazing opportunity to become differentiated within the relationship, to be able to learn about yourself even while you are in this relationship with this other person. Now, I'm not saying that you stay in an abusive or emotionally absent relationship, but if you are starting to question the concepts around narcissism, is my partner a narcissist? Am I the narcissist? Then you're in the right place. First of all, if you're questioning yourself, no, you're not a narcissist. You're here, you're listening to podcasts, you're even the one asking the questions, but you probably feel a little bit crazy because you're trying to make sense of some nonsense. But I digress. I've got a lot of episodes where I talk so much more about that. But today we're going to talk about gaslighting. And it is a form of emotional manipulation where somebody makes you doubt your own thoughts, your own feelings, and your understanding of, ironically, your reality. And the person doing the gaslighting tries to confuse you. They make you think that you're wrong or you're crazy, even when you're not. And if you are unfamiliar or want to know more about the term itself, the origin story, the term gaslighting comes from a 1938 play called Gaslight. And then later it was made into a movie, I believe, in 1944. But in the story, a husband tries to convince his wife that she's going insane by dimming the gas lights in their home and then denying that the light changed when she notices it. And this is where we get the term gaslighting to describe a similar manipulative behavior. And I know that gaslighting is something that I'm looking at or dealing with or talking to people about on a daily basis. So I'm grateful when somebody comes to me and is really open and honest and says, I don't really understand what it means. I realize that if this is not something that you are aware of or really understanding that you might be living in a state of feeling like you're being gaslit often, that then this can just be another one of those psychology buzzwords. Why I think an episode like today's is important is because we're going to talk about 4 different types of gaslighting. And I think that this will resonate a bit more because when you just hear it, it can also sound like when somebody says this person is a narcissist or this person is gaslighting me. The person may be emotionally immature. They may be showing or exhibiting narcissistic traits and tendencies or extreme emotional immaturity. And they may be gaslighting, quite frankly, without even knowing about it, which brings us to the first type of gaslighting, literally called unaware gaslighting, because some people do gaslight without even knowing that they're doing it. They think that they're being reasonable, but they don't realize how their actions impact or affect others. And they might not be willing, which is a big part of it, to see the things from somebody else's point of view. It might be too uncomfortable. It goes back to that. What do we do to get rid of our discomfort? It's a lot easier to say, I didn't do it, or that isn't what I remember, than to say, okay, I did do that. I didn't mean anybody harm, or, okay, here's what I remember, or I might not even remember, and being completely honest about that and not just as a way to get out of that discomfort. So I broke this one down. If you, under this unaware gaslighting, the I don't get it act. Imagine explaining something to a friend, a partner, a spouse over and over, which I would imagine that most of us have been there about certain things, but they keep saying, I don't really understand. And you start to wonder, am I just not explaining it well enough? Or how do you not understand? And we'll do those amazingly emotionally immature things ourselves. Like we will slow the words down, but we'll say the thing over and over again. And thinking that if I just say it again, slower, that then the person's going to say, oh, now that you said it the 3rd time and it was much slower, I think I understand now. There's multiple things happening here. The friend might not want to understand. Or maybe doesn't even know that about themselves. And they may not even get I know that there are situations, and I tried to think about this. This is funny. It sounds like I'm saying, I know there's been a thing or two in my life that I haven't understood, but I can't remember what it is. But I know that there are times, well, okay. I remember a client I had once. I loved working with this person. They were an airplane mechanic. And I remember they had such an engineering brain that there were times where they would just say, I mean, the physics behind leverage, when you have a lever and you pulley and right then I'm like, I don't understand. And there were a couple of times where I thought to myself, I am going to understand. I'm an intelligent human being. I can do this. And I would say, okay, explain it to me like you're explaining it to a 3rd grader. And then he would try, and I would say, how about 1st grade? Can we do that? And oftentimes I still would just think, I really don't understand. But there's a difference there even where somebody who truly wants to understand will try harder to get it. But I look at this unaware gaslighting of, it's like where people are living in 2 completely different worlds, because sometimes a person might ignore what you say. So there's the I don't get it act. Sometimes a person might ignore what you say and then talk about things that you never mention. If you are talking about ice cream, which I love talking about ice cream, and they respond, oh, when you were talking about desserts, like the cheesecake, and this can make you feel confused and wonder if you are remembering things wrong because you don't even like cheesecake, but you do like ice cream. And so that's this unaware, unintentional gaslighting, where if that person has made this leap in their own brain of, well, if we're talking about desserts, I like cheesecake. And quite frankly, I'm now learning about the world of gelato. You got frozen yogurt, you got ice cream. They're all cold and pretty tasty. So I still don't really know what the big differences are. So if somebody's saying to me, well, did you have gelato? And I'm saying, I think it was like ice cream. And if they're saying ice cream is not gelato, my friend, then I'm saying, I guess, I don't know. I think it is. So by definition, I'm doing a little bit of gaslighting. But there is a place near our home in Arizona called Jeremiah's, and they have something. It's like a kid's version of a dirt cup without the worms, the gummy worms, that I think there's all kinds of things in there. Might even be some pudding, but it's phenomenal. I would not know how to describe it, but I digress. Let me give you a couple of examples though. One, I would say the forgetful partner. Alex often forgets to do chores around the house. And when their partner Sam brings it up, Alex genuinely doesn't remember agreeing to do them. Alex might say, you never told me to do that. So then Sam's going to doubt their own memory. But here's the difference. There will be times, and we'll get to these later, where Alex just doesn't want to do it. But this is one of these times where, and hopefully we maybe all been in this situation, so we can empathize a bit here, but Alex isn't trying to be manipulative. Alex truly does not realize that they committed to it or how their forgetfulness affects Sam. And I thought about this one quite a bit more. So this week, somebody was talking to me about how they not only had to get upset at their kids to do something, but they found the same with their spouse. And what we found interesting, the more that we talked about this scenario with her spouse, was that her kids, we'd identified, wouldn't do anything until either her or her husband started yelling. And that was really frustrating. But it was because when they would say something calmly, then there was no follow through and the kids would not do anything. So it had been this learned response. And she started recognizing that that was the same concept with her spouse. And the more that we've been focusing on the literal words, emotional immaturity, is the spouse, the husband at that point, was acting just like one of the kids. He too had grown up in a home where the only time that he really took action on things was when he got in trouble, where it was a fine. I didn't even know that you wanted me to take the trash out, where then she could still come up with such greatest hits as, really, we've been married 30 years, you take the trash out all the time, but I still have to yell at you to get you to take the trash out, it's an immature response on both of their ends. But I think the point, if you can see that, is that that is a modeled behavior that they both brought into the relationship because that's what they had seen modeled throughout their own childhoods, where they had watched their parents do the same thing, that until somebody got really upset, then things just didn't get done. And there was just no way to have a productive, connected conversation to see the kid not doing something and the parent being able to go grounded with a calm, confident disposition and say, hey, champ, I'm noticing that you're not going to take out the trash right now. And this is the part where then I typically will start yelling, and then you will get mad and get up and say, fine, I'll do it in a huff. So I would love to avoid that. So take me on your train of thought. Help me understand what's going on here. And it doesn't mean that the kid's all of a sudden going to develop these emotionally mature muscles and say, man, that's a great question, Mom. And I think what I'm doing is I'm sitting here waiting because I know that I've got this extra time, because until you yell, then I don't get motivated to do things. But I think with a consistent, emotionally consistent pattern of conversations, when the parent is being the more emotionally mature person, because now what are they doing? They're modeling emotional maturity. And it was something that they didn't have in their own home. So look at this amazing opportunity they have to break this pattern and start to teach emotional maturity with that emotional consistency, that curiosity of their kids' experience. Teach that, model that, show the map of what that looks like. So now we're changing that pattern, and that pattern that has been playing out for probably generations in the family system is now changing for the better, because the parent is now aware that this is a me issue. The fact that they are not getting things done and that I have to yell. Why do I have to yell? Well, it's because I don't come at the situation with emotional regulation. I'm dysregulated. And so now when you look at this scenario with Alex, who is modeling the same types of behavior that they saw when they were a kid, it makes more sense in context. So what if Alex in the scenario doesn't even register when they commit to something, that they are literally committing to something, and now that other person is counting on them to do what they are committing to do? So in that moment, they are committing to it. I will take care of this. But then it's in their worldview, it's just, well, yeah, I committed to it, but I forgot. In Sam's situation, when they grew up, when somebody committed to something, that meant I can count on that. It isn't okay, you've got that, except for if you don't, I understand. Because if I'm going to be fully transparent, we have a situation registering a Jeep in Arizona. It is a long story, but it has been a literal nightmare. And oh no, I did not misuse figurative and literal, because I had a nightmare about having to drive it back to California to get it registered and getting lost in a desert somewhere. But I told my wife that I would take care of it. And I am. But I know for a fact in the past, there were times where I would say, I'll take care of something. And I really meant it in that moment, but not even realize that what I probably meant, really, I meant it in that moment, but I wasn't even aware that some sort of complex process, or maybe simple process, was occurring in my brain that probably said, yes, I will take care of it as soon as you remind me enough. And then it all of a sudden becomes important to me. We're talking about the forgetful partner who just truly committed to do something and forgot, period. And on occasion, that's probably decently tolerated. But if it's a consistent pattern of behavior, well, then I think Captain Forgetful here needs to go lay down on a therapist couch and untangle the part of them that literally forgets, like gaps of memory. Because yes, it can be just man, that's a me thing. I forget sometimes. It could also be a pattern. But if that's a pattern, so somebody remembers the order of the NBA draft from 2014, but then they can't remember to do something that they committed to earlier in the day or this week, then is it necessarily a memory issue? Or is it a childhood wound of knowing that I will never do it, whatever it is, well enough, but I'll also get in trouble if I don't appear to be willing to do things. But then if I don't do them, they will get done without me. And maybe I'll even get the double bonus of saying, hey, I'll do it. And then eventually it just gets done. And actually, if I'm thinking about it while we're at it, how about the trifecta validation here, where then the person can actually get a tiny bit frustrated that you didn't trust them when they said they would do it and you did it without telling them. But also in this world of unaware gaslighting, we also have the well-meaning parent. And this is one where a parent consistently tells their kid things like, hey, you're just shy, whenever the child expresses anxiety around social situations. So the parent thinks they're being supportive, but they're actually dismissing the child's feelings. They're making the child question their own emotions. And that is a pretty big soapbox I think I've been jumping up and down on over the past few months, as I'm starting to recognize that even the best of parent was telling their kid when their kid was growing up that not to worry about it. It's not a big deal. Don't think that way. Sit up straight, tuck your shirt in. We don't do that. We don't say that. So the kid eventually just feels, well, the person I am being apparently is not the right version of that. So they internalize those emotions and they go throughout their life needing somebody to tell them that what they're doing is okay. So that first type of gaslighting then is just, it falls under this unaware gaslighting. But then if we go to the second type of gaslighting, this one is one that I just will call it feeling like something's off. Because in this type, the person that is being gaslit, they feel like something isn't quite right, but they're really not understanding what is going on. They might have had these similar experiences before. They feel a little bit uneasy, but they kind of keep just doing the same thing because they're pretty sure that they're not the one that's crazy. The example might be this, what's called the word flood. You send a short message, hey, just checking in on something, curious what your thoughts are. And you get a tremendously long response back. And that can be overwhelming. And it can make you honestly think, I just asked, hey, can you give me an update on the project? I didn't know I would get a report back, a 12-page report with double space with APA citing back that's talking about a lot of other things that have been going on in this person's life, in essence, to justify maybe why they aren't doing the things that you probably thought they were on the report. Then you may even start to doubt yourself and wonder, did I even ask for all this information or what am I missing? And then that scenario, the person responding is most likely trying to defend themselves against what they see as a challenge, even if you didn't mean it that way. And I think that's where we're looking a little bit more into the emotional immaturity angle. So if you say something like, hey, did you finish that project by the deadline that we'd agreed on? Then if that person did not, and rather than taking ownership and saying, no, I didn't, ran into some snags, or hey, the project ended up being bigger than I thought, or I totally got distracted, taking ownership. At that point, they see that as like, oh, so you think that I'm doing something wrong. Well, let me just explain to you all the things going on in my life times 10 with some additional information. And then I will try to confuse you with all the minute details of the project. And then I still won't even address that if I got it done or not. It's funny, I'll have this every now and again. Somebody saying, hey, do you have a last minute? Do you have anything open? Do you have any cancellations today? And then I'll say, oh my gosh, I do. Today at 2:00. And this might be at, 10 in the morning. And then I'll say, let me know as soon as you can. And then the person might say, okay, are you sure? Almost as if they know, okay, I'm going into my next session. So that just bought them an hour. So I come out and, yep, got 3 hours. Somebody else just emailed me or texted me as well, looking for a cancellation. So can you just let me know if this is going to work for you? And then you might get a thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up. Does that mean thumbs up it works, or thumbs up I'll let you know? I come out of the next session and then the person's saying, man, I really would love to be able to take that appointment, period. So in those scenarios, I do start to feel like I'm going crazy, where I said earlier, hey, can you do this time or not? That again, that's part of this type of gaslighting, that just, it's the feeling that something's off. So we talked about the word flow, we talked about the overshare. And I think another one that fits into this is, I call it the defensive friend. And this is a classic where we'll say that if somebody points out that their friend forgot their birthday, then their friend, instead of going, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I am so sorry, the friend gets really defensive. And they all of a sudden list out all the times that they've done all these things for you. And they've been so busy, and how the person that's bringing this up should be way more understanding. So you now feel like, okay, that is not what I thought would happen when I said you forgot my birthday. I actually was just hoping that we would have been able to hang out maybe on my birthday, because in the past, that's what we do. But instead of addressing the actual issue, the person who forgot tries to justify themselves, and then they leave the person who brought it up feeling guilty for bringing it up. Now we move into number 3. We're getting into the more familiar type of gaslighting. I think it's important to recognize these different types of gaslighting, that we're progressing from this is harmless and unaware to now, okay, it just something feels off. And now knowing it's wrong, but the person is trying to not seriously harm, we're still able to give this person the benefit of the doubt, because this type of gaslighter most likely knows that their actions can hurt other people, but they wouldn't call it gaslighting. They're just not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to drive anybody crazy, but they do pretty much want to win arguments. So here's some examples of ways that happen. Ignoring what you say. The person just acts like you never said certain things. They can make you wonder, are your messages getting through, or are you remembering things correctly? So you can see where it graduates a little bit from the example we gave of I asked something and I got a tremendous amount of word salad back, a word flood. But this might be one where I've asked 3 questions in a text and I get 2 of them answered. And the one is the one I really wanted to get answered. So then I might even ask that again, and then I get nothing. But then they might come back and ask a follow-up on one of the questions that they actually answered. They're ignoring what I say. And in that scenario, from a therapist lens, it is your opportunity to set a boundary. If you don't respond to this message, then I will continue to ask this question. And not saying it as if I'm being some big jerk. That's a pretty normal part of the human experience. That if I needed a question answered and you refuse to answer it, then I will keep asking it. I might even say, hey, can you tell me why you aren't answering this question? Help me understand. So that's ignoring what you say. Another part of this one, and this type of the knowing it's wrong, but that the person's not necessarily trying to seriously harm you, can just be downright confusing communication. The person might send mixed messages, like saying that, hey, I'm really upset with what you've done right now. I do appreciate some of this stuff, but I don't want you to respond right now. I'll touch base with you later. And so all of a sudden it's, I'm not really sure what just happened. I'm not sure the rules here. And another example of this is, in this category, is the competitive sibling. 2 siblings, Jess, 28, Chris, 26. They're looking through old family photos and they come across a picture of one of them holding a trophy, and Jess said, oh yeah, it's when I won the state spelling bee in 8th grade. And Chris replies, it's like literally me that you're looking at. And I remember the word I won. It was phenomenon. And Jess knows, because now that Jess looks, and Chris is right, Jess does not want to admit it. So Jess insists, I actually remember winning that. I mean, you must have been holding my trophy, or you're thinking of a different competition. And as the argument continues, Jess keeps now fabricating details about the whole event. Even though Jess knows that they are wrong, and they're not trying to hurt Chris, but Jess wants to win the disagreement. So Chris starts to doubt their own memory, thinking, okay, fine, I guess I could be remembering this wrong, which is wild, because it will cause Jess in that scenario to feel even more validated. And you can see where the immaturity part again creeps in here, because to the emotionally immature, or person on the narcissistic spectrum, it is an all or nothing, black or white experience. Life is, if you actually turn out to be right and they are wrong, then they think that you are better than them. And they think, oh, you now are in the one up position. I am in the one down. I need to reestablish my one up position. So I need to make you feel bad. I will argue tooth and nail until you back down from your position. Another example of this is with the avoidant partner. Just imagine a situation, we'll say the partner, Kelly, tries to discuss relationship issues with her partner, Jordan. And then Jordan just changes the subject and I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't remember that happening. Or claims Kelly's overreacting. And Jordan knows this isn't a healthy way to communicate, but uses those tactics basically to avoid difficult conversations. And that's going to leave Kelly feeling unheard. And I think that's where, as we're tiptoeing or walking right up now to the version of gaslighting that we often think about, the trying to cause harm, essentially on purpose, that you can see where when somebody is just unable to sit with that discomfort, but if they are aware of that then that is where the gaslighting starts to become a little bit more nefarious, is the word that's been stuck in my head for quite a while. But it's done at the detriment of somebody in the relationship. The gaslighter is saying, in this moment, it is more important for me to not be uncomfortable or to be right than for the sake of the relationship. And what's fascinating is that person, if they are emotionally immature enough, insecure enough, narcissistic enough, then to them, they will argue that, hey, the relationship, there's plenty of things I've done that are good. In that moment right then, no, I'm not going to put up with them thinking that way about me, because I'm sure maybe I didn't do everything perfect, but they can't talk to me that way. They can't treat me that way. So this moves us into that trying to cause harm on purpose, which is the fourth type of gaslighting. And this is what most people think of, though, as gaslighting. The person doing it most likely does know it. They know they're hurting others and they do it anyway. They might tell obvious lies. They might deny things that they've said or done, or try to manipulate you, or wear you down over time, or they might say one thing but do another, or try to turn other people against you, or use your confusion against you, or accuse you of doing things that they're actually doing, or they know you didn't do. And let me go through these with some brief examples. So getting others involved, one of the really harmful tactics is when the gaslighter gets other people to agree with them. And that can make you doubt yourself even more. And especially if you feel like it's now you against a group of other people. So an example might be a manipulative boss. So these are all based on real stories. So we got Emma, a very talented graphic designer, and she presents a new logo design in a team meeting, and her boss, Mark, praises the design. A week later, in a meeting with upper management, then Mark, of course, presents the same design as his own idea. Now, Emma confronted him privately saying, you know that was my design, right? And he responded, I mean, I don't actually. I remember that we collaborated on that design last week. I remember that I had a whole lot of input in that design. I remember that you did the things that I had suggested. Now, are you actually trying to take credit for my work? And then actually Mark starts telling other people. And again, based off a true story, unfortunately, hey, be careful with Emma. She's been trying to take credit for other people's work. I think the stress is getting to her. And then he even suggests to HR that Emma might need a performance review. So then Emma starts to doubt herself, wondering, I did create the design, right? Am I remembering things wrong? And then her confidence in her work and her ideas begins to crumble. And the reason I think that this example is just fascinating is that part right there. You can see where true gaslighting is destructive, because rather than celebrating Emma's graphic design skills and this logo design, which it was an amazing logo design, Emma is now going to therapy to talk about, is she going crazy and what is she doing wrong? And all of that is a waste of her emotional calories that should have been spent or could have been spent in creating more amazing products, creating more amazing designs and artwork. And this is the part that just gets me so just frustrated and sad and empathetic for the people that are in relationships with people who are emotionally abusive, emotionally manipulative, who are narcissistic, who are emotionally immature, because now the person who is kind, the person who is just trying to be in a relationship, that are trying to do their best, trying to figure things out, is now having to go back and try to figure themselves out about something that isn't even true. So that is where the narcissistic person, they win, because now something that they just said, and now they're moving on to the next part of their day. And this one, the boss ends up going on to his next meeting, going on to whatever he is, going home, whatever he's doing. And now Emma is crushed because she is thinking, I don't understand. And that's where the pathologically kind person comes into play, where she's lived her whole life trying to be the one who, I will fix it. I will take care of it. You can diffuse your frustration, your anger, whatever it is, into the relationship, and I'll be the one to grab it because that's what I'm here for. And this might be as good of a place as any to fit this in, where something like nice guy syndrome comes into play. And then we'll get back to the story of Emma. But I had some notes about a scenario, and I think I might have used a Sarah already, but I had this couple as Tom and Sarah, all based on a true story. But meet Tom. He's a 35-year-old accountant who likes walks on the beach. No, it's not the dating game. But Tom is somebody who really prided himself on being a good husband. He was a good father, and he always has been the type to avoid conflict, believing that if he is nice enough, if he works hard enough, and is always there for his family, everything will just work out fine. The classic nice guy syndrome, which is a form of emotional immaturity. I feel like that is something that I struggled with for a very long time, and probably there are some remnants of that still. So the situation, it's a Saturday morning. Tom's wife, Sarah, had plans to go shopping with her friends, and not that she needed to inform him months in advance, but she had just remembered, and Tom had been looking forward to spending time with Sarah and the kids, maybe even taking them all to the park. And Sarah remembers that morning that she was going to go shopping with her friends. So then she just casually mentions that, hey, I'm sure I already told you, but I'm going to go hang out with my friends today. I'm going to do some shopping. And just by the way, I also told my mom that we'd have dinner at our place tonight. So I need you to mow the lawn, and you know how that she'll go snooping around everywhere. So I meant to get to the garage this whole week and I didn't. So can you also clean the garage before we go and straighten up around the house? And actually, the kids' rooms are a mess. They're a nightmare. So if you can get the kids to take care of their rooms as well, that would be great. I'm not really sure what time I'll be home. So Tom feels a huge wave of disappointment because he had these other plans. He had planned on spending time with Sarah and the kids and just having this amazing day. He had been off slaying the dragon all week, not diminishing what Sarah was doing, but he had just really looked forward to the weekend. Now, to be fair, as the couples therapist, we went on to also have conversations around being able to set some expectations early on in the week so that they were able to communicate more effectively. So if you're thinking about that, it would have been wonderful if Tom had even talked about what his plans were for the weekend and Sarah had done the same. Not that they can't have flexibility. You can see where maybe the couples therapist in me says, I can work through a lot of different scenarios, but in this particular one, let's go back to Tom then finally musters up the courage to express his feelings. He says, hey, I feel disappointed. I was really hoping to take the kids to the park today. I was hoping that you would be able to join us. Any chance that we could reschedule dinner with your mom? Sarah got extremely irritated and said, what? You never want to see my family. You're always putting your needs first. Apparently, if you want to go to the park, then I guess that's all of a sudden the number one need. But if you really cared about us, if you really cared about my family, you'd make a bigger effort, especially right now. It's not like you have a lot going on today. And what's the big deal? The lawn needs to be mowed. You've talked too about the garage need to be cleaned. And you know how much time I spend with the kids trying to get them to clean their room. So it'd be nice if you could help out. So Sarah's response is a form of gaslighting. She's twisting the entire situation to make Tom feel guilty for expressing his own needs, his own feelings, his own emotions. And she's also making a lot of blanket statements about him never wanting to see her family and always putting his needs first, which, quite frankly, is not true. These all or nothing statements, these black or white statements. So Tom is now going to need to defend himself of something that isn't even true. So then Tom has this internal struggle because he is hurt. He is confused. He knows that he does care about Sarah's family, and he often puts their needs before his own. And he felt like quite often. So he does want to defend himself. He wants to explain that he was just looking forward to time with the kids, but this nice guy syndrome kicks in. He doesn't want to create more conflict. He fears being seen as a bad husband or father. He believes if he just tries harder, Sarah will appreciate him more. So what does Tom do? Oh, he suffers in silence. It's one of the things that he's so good at. Instead of expressing his hurt or standing up for himself, he retreats into silent suffering and says, you're right, I'm sorry. I'll get everything done before dinner. I appreciate your patience with me. So the aftermath, Sarah leaves for a shopping trip. She's gone all day. Tom's left feeling guilty. He feels inadequate. He feels overwhelmed. He feels like he'll never be enough. So to cope with those feelings and now prove his worth, he, of course, cancels plans with the kids, telling them that they'll go to the park another day, and they are incredibly disappointed. He spends the day frantically mowing the lawn and cleaning the garage and trying to get the kids to clean their rooms, to which then they had been planning on going to the park. They don't really see Tom very often because he works a lot during the week, and so they are disappointed. He is disappointed. He even goes out of his way because he now wants the kudos. He wants to make sure that Sarah isn't disappointed with him because he worries, quite frankly, that if so, then there may be no intimacy. She uses that as leverage or holds that against him. So he finds time to wash Sarah's car, hoping his extra effort will show just how much he cares. And by the time that then Sarah's mom comes over for dinner, he's exhausted. He's emotionally drained. And throughout dinner with his mother-in-law, he tries to be more present, but he's quieter than usual. He's hurt from the morning's interactions, and he puts on a smile, and he plays the role the best he can of the perfect son-in-law. So it's just a continuing cycle in that scenario. That pattern repeats itself in various forms over and over again. And Tom continues to suffer in silence, and he's always striving to do more, to be more, and in hopes of earning approval and avoiding conflict. And meanwhile, his own needs and his feelings go unaddressed, and he starts to grow resentment and deterioration of his self-esteem. And the tragedy of that story is that Tom's nice guy behavior is intended to create harmony, but it actually enables Sarah's emotional immaturity and the gaslighting. So in those scenarios, until Tom learns to express his feelings or set boundaries and value his own needs, that dynamic is going to continue. So you can see the destructive nature of what gaslighting can do. Had Sarah been able to self-confront, had she been working on her own challenges or struggles or issues, then they could have a brilliant, beautiful, four-pillared conversation there where whoever noticed that something was off, if Sarah had all of a sudden assumed good intentions, given Tom the benefit of the doubt, and then she couldn't tell him that his feelings and emotions were wrong, she could go into questions about, hey, tell me more about taking the kids to the park, and then she doesn't maintain this victim status and say, okay, fine. I guess your needs come first, but then been able to really hear him and understand him, that he had been gone all week, that he felt like he's missing out on his kids' lives, that he misses Sarah, that he really wants to connect. Then maybe she could have said, okay, let's split the difference. I'll try to get back by a certain time, and let's go to the park. And if Tom's now seeing Sarah and he can't tell her that her experiences are wrong, or if he's giving her the benefit of the doubt, or knows that there's a reason why she is trying to get away with her friends, and then he can now get into my pillar 3, questions before comments, and ask more and say, hey, tell me about this time with your friends. And if it's just a simple, I don't know, they just asked and I just thought I'd go, at that point, then maybe she is going to be in a position to understand, okay, I hear you, Tom, and I agree. Let's spend more time together, versus, let's say, well, one of my friends is really going through it in their marriage. And so she's reached out. She wants to get the girlfriends together, and she's really looking for some advice because she's going through it. Now, maybe at that point, Tom's able to say, oh my gosh, hey, you go. I'll take the kids to the park. Maybe we can circle back around and we can clean the house together. So there are those more emotionally mature ways to communicate when we can get out of the emotional immaturity, when we can get out of the gaslighting. But let's get back to the story of Emma. And so then the good news was Emma eventually, it wasn't like she convinced them all to pick her and she was chosen and then Mark was taken over in a coup. No, she left and is now working for a different company and seems to be very happy. So then that whole experience actually was a bit of a catalyst to help her realize that she needs to be in a place, in a work environment where she is appreciated. Let's talk about the abusive partner. Now, this is, I think the names here are from an old John Cougar Mellencamp song, literally called Jack and Diane, or no, Life Goes On. So let's just say Jack and Diane have been married for a few years, and Jack constantly accuses Diane of cheating, even though there's no evidence. He demands to check her phone regularly. He questions every text, every call. When Diane goes out with friends, Jack just bombards her with texts. Who are you really with? I bet you're seeing somebody else. When she gets home, he interrogates her about every detail of her evening. Now, if Diane gets upset, then Jack says, well, if you weren't cheating, you wouldn't be so defensive. Only guilty people act like this. You are acting crazy, and it's actually making me suspect you even more. In that scenario, you can see that now Diane, who is a nice person, who is out with her friends, who is not cheating, is now feeling, do I really put off that vibe? That is just so sad, because now she is questioning herself, and even her trying to defend herself causes Jack to then feel like, oh, she's guilty. We've got this example of an avoidant partner, Kelly and Jordan. They've been dating for years. Kelly tries to discuss communication issues, and Kelly says, Jordan, I really feel like you've been distant. So can we talk about it? And then Jordan responds and says, I have no idea what you're talking about. Everything's fine, but here you go, overthinking things again. And so when Kelly brings up specific examples, Jordan says, I don't even remember that happening. Like, seriously, you are exaggerating, or you're being too sensitive because it's not really that big of a deal. And Jordan knows this is not healthy. It's not a good way to communicate, but uses these tactics to avoid difficult conversations, to get rid of their own discomfort. And after a lot of those kind of interactions, then Kelly will start to think, okay, maybe I'm overthinking things. Maybe I am the problem in the relationship. So let's talk about projection, because this is a fascinating concept that I don't think I've dug deep enough into on the podcast. Projection in psychology is when somebody takes their own thoughts, their own feelings or traits that they don't like about themselves, and they put them onto someone else. And if this is not something that you've done, it will seem like you're going to yab at it. Well, it's crazy and it's obvious. But it's if you walk around, you have a stain on your shirt, but instead of admitting that stain, you're pointing out, well, look at the stain on my friend's shirt. I mean, that's a bigger stain. And even if there's really not that big of a stain there, it's a way for people to avoid dealing with the parts of themselves that they're not comfortable with. And it's an immature way to project those feelings or those issues onto someone else. And so now I can say, see, look at that person. At least I'm not that person. It's the old, at least I'm not that bad. Regular projection and narcissistic projection are similar, but there's a key difference. Regular projection is something that most people might do from time to time if they just are feeling a little bit off or embarrassed, insecure. And it's usually not intentional, and people might not even realize they're doing it. If somebody feels guilty about something, they might accuse the other person of being dishonest to make themselves feel better. So if they really did get caught, they're like, okay, but you aren't perfect either. So that's a simple version of projection. Narcissistic projection, on the other hand, it's more intense and it happens more often. And it's typically done by people with incredible emotionally immature traits or narcissistic traits and tendencies. And because these people have an inflated sense of their own importance, and they have a deep need for attention and admiration and an absolute fear of abandonment and rejection. So when they project, it's usually to protect their fragile self-esteem, to protect their ego, and to make themselves look better by putting others down. So if they can make someone else feel in the one down position and they're in the one up position, then they are okay. So some of the examples of narcissistic projection are blaming others for their own mistakes. So say there's a group project and the narcissist messes up their part. So again, instead of owning it, they might say, well, if John would have done his part better, then I wouldn't have had to do that the way I was going to do it. My mistake is clearly only because of the way that John did it. So I don't even think I should be held responsible. Or accusing others of being selfish. So a narcissistic person might constantly call other people selfish, even when those people are being considerate. And this could be because the narcissist is actually the selfish one, but they can't admit it to themselves. And this is one of those situations where when a kind person is being selfless, then a narcissist can turn around and say, well, that's actually quite selfish because I wanted you to do something. And you're saying, hey, whatever you think is okay, whatever you want to do, like I'm okay with that. Or jealousy. If a narcissist is feeling jealous of somebody else's success, they might accuse that person of being jealous of them instead. Oh, well, you're just mad because I'm actually more popular than you, or I'm more successful than you. Cheating. A narcissist who's cheating on their partner might become overly suspicious and accuse their partner of cheating, even if there's no evidence, because it is, again, this projection. Because of their own guilt, they project it onto their partner, and now the partner has to defend themselves of something that isn't even true. Criticism. If a narcissist feels insecure about their abilities, they might constantly criticize others for being incompetent or not good enough. But the tricky thing about this whole narcissistic projection is that it's often used to manipulate situations and make the narcissistic person look better and make everybody else look bad. It goes back to the one-up position, and it's their way of avoiding responsibility or taking ownership or sitting with any discomfort for their actions, and to maintain their inflated self-image that they would never be the one that does that. And I think there's a interesting point to just go on with regard to this. It's one of the questions I got asked after the first one was, why do narcissists think they can cheat or treat you disrespectfully, and yet they expect you to be faithful and respect them? Let's talk about the double standards and why they have double standards about things like cheating and respect, because they often have a set of rules for themselves and a different set for everybody else. And this is especially true when it comes to things like faithfulness in relationships or showing respect. Let's break this down. There's several reasons why. One is a sense of entitlement. The narcissistic person believes they are special and that they do deserve special treatment. So they may think I'm amazing, so I can do whatever I want. But for you should be so lucky to be with me. You better mind your P's and Q's. You better behave. And then there's which we're aware of, this lack of empathy, because the narcissist struggles to understand or care about others' feelings. So when they cheat, they don't think about how it hurts you. But when you disrespect them, they feel deeply wounded because it's all about them. Remembering that empathy is trying to get in somebody else's shoes, but the narcissist can still feel, but when they feel, then they want to get rid of that discomfort by then projecting onto you so that you now basically take care of their emotions or their anger. But that different rules for different people is so real, because in the narcissist's mind, there are two categories, themselves and everybody else. For themselves, I am unique. The normal rules don't apply to me. But for others, you need to follow the rules to prove that you're worthy of me. And that's why the narcissist can say, we're not going to spend any more money when you feel you need to spend something. And they say, I cannot believe you spent money. And I guess the better version of that is to say they come home and they just spent money. Well, that's different. Special rules. These rules don't apply to me. We're not going to spend money. These golf clubs were on sale. What was I supposed to do? But it really digs back to this deep fear of abandonment, because despite seeming confident, many narcissists fear being left or feeling betrayed. So they're cheating. It's not serious, just for fun. But I still need you. I still need to interact with you to know that I exist. But your faithfulness, you better be 100% loyal in everything. We're not even talking just fidelity, but I need to know that you will do anything for me to prove that you won't leave me. Again, it goes back to love or control. In an adult relationship, you can't have both. But projection, just taking a look at how narcissists project their own faults onto others, this applies here too, because they might accuse you of cheating because they're cheating or thinking about it. There's certain clues that you'll see where somebody will be in my office and they'll say, yeah, and I didn't even think about cheating on her. And even just to bring that up was like, then why are you saying that if it wasn't even something you were thinking about? They demand respect because they know that they're not respectful themselves. Now, whether they know that, or if it's a subconscious understanding, but so much of it's also about maintaining control, because double standards are a way for narcissists to keep the upper hand in relationships. By cheating, they show that they have options and you should feel insecure. By demanding respect, they keep you walking on eggshells and always trying to please them. And it's also part of that whole grandiosity, the inflated ego, self-image. They have such an inflated sense of self-importance that they can think, I'm so amazing. Of course, everybody wants me. It's natural for me to have multiple partners. It's natural for me to give the people what they want. But for you, well, you couldn't possibly attract anybody else. So don't even try. And then lack of accountability. Narcissists rarely take responsibility for their actions. When they cheat, it's not my fault. You weren't meeting my needs. But when you disrespect them, you are entirely to blame for how bad this makes them feel. The bottom line on that is the double standards are not fair. They're not healthy. They're a reflection of the narcissist's distorted view of themselves and others. Because in healthy relationships, the same rules of respect and faithfulness should apply to both partners. Emotional consistency is there for everyone. So remember, if you are in a relationship with somebody who constantly holds you to standards that they don't follow themselves, it's not your fault. And you do deserve better. Just as a quick wrap up, this is quite a journey, learning more about gaslighting. There's a lot there, but I really want you to listen very closely, because here's the part that's crucial. When you're dealing with a narcissist or somebody who's incredibly emotionally immature, you're not just dealing with somebody who's just a bit self-centered. You're up against what can be viewed as a master manipulator. I want to come up with this t-shirts that say gaslighting since 79, whenever they were born. And that's because it's a childhood defense mechanism. This is not me wanting to say, hey, you need to have empathy and bless their heart. But if you're really looking at somebody who gaslights like it's nobody's business, they even confabulate their memory, they change it, it can't be them that did anything wrong, then that has been something that is just ingrained in them, and that is part of their implicit memory, or what it feels like to be them, because that is based on a whole residue of lived experience. It can eventually look like a lot of nasty tricks in the toolkit. And unfortunately, they're not afraid to use them when they feel bad, when they feel like they are threatened, or when they feel insecure. So that's when you find that they'll cut you off from your friends, your family. They'll isolate you, they'll leave you feeling very vulnerable. They'll pile on the guilt until you feel like you're drowning in it. In 1 minute, their charm and their seduction. And then the next, they're fawning over you like you are the most important person in the world. And then here comes the emotional whiplash. And now you are a horrible person, all or nothing, black or white. And then let us not forget the favorite party trick that we've talked about today, gaslighting. They'll have you questioning your own sanity, your own memories, and it's like they're rewriting your reality, and it is not for a better sequel. But here's the kicker, though. They do sprinkle in just enough good times, just enough kindness to keep you hooked. It's that intermittent reinforcement. The person who delivers the punishment also gives you the reward. So it's like they're giving you tiny sips of water in a desert that they have made, that they've created, and before you know it, you're addicted to those rare moments of love. Thinking, okay, maybe this time it's different. I just want to bring some awareness that it's typically not different. It's just exhausting, and it's dangerous, because this toxic dance doesn't just drain you of your energy or your time or your love. It goes deeper, because it starts to mess with your sense of self, your instincts, that little voice inside you that says this is not right, because over time they'll silence it. Those personal boundaries you built up over the years, that's a challenge. They have an emotional bulldozer, and they go right through them. So if any of this sounds familiar, if you're nodding along and thinking, it's my life right now, then I want you to take a deep breath and hear me, that you deserve better. You deserve to trust your gut, to have your boundaries respected, to be loved without conditions or manipulations, not to beg somebody to love you, because you have everything that you need within you. And life is supposed to be about going and interacting with others and unlocking all the amazing talents and abilities that you have within you. But recognizing what's happening is the first step to reclaiming your life. And you have the power, you've got the strength. Even if you can't feel it right now, it's there. Don't let anybody, a narcissist or anybody else, convince you otherwise. So stay strong, stay aware. Most importantly, start to stay true to yourself, even if it's just inside of your head at first, because you've got this. You've got a lot of people, I'm sure, that if they knew, that they've got your back. Reach out if you have thoughts, questions, stories. If this brought up examples for you, I would love to cover those, answer those however I can. But I appreciate you being here. Spread this message, this episode, if you think it'll help others, and have an amazing week. We'll see you next time on Waking Up to Narcissism.